Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and once again it is time for the Monday Q&As. So let's get this started. Same format as I've been doing, but I think I might have thrown in an extra question or two in here this week because I just couldn't really pick which ones I wanted to do. I actually picked about 5 more than I did and I chopped them out. Same as normal, most of the earlier questions are going to be general fitness and nutrition related. Then I'm going to do a couple of PED and TRT type questions and one personal question at the end. All right, first question. Are humans really herbivores, or is this a bunch of vegan propaganda bullshit made by the vegans because they're a bunch of hipsters who want animals to stop dying? Partial truth to it, the latter, though, that really comes down to them basically being a bunch of hipsters who want animals to stop dying, which it just doesn't work that way. You have to kill animals even for agriculture. But their argument is, of course, that obviously less would die with agriculture than with eating meat. But most of the world doesn't eat the amount of meat that we eat in the West. As far as us being herbivores, we share kind of a lot of mixed traits biologically that herbivores and omnivores do. Most of our traits are really similar to most true omnivores. We're obviously not obligate carnivores. We are not natural carnivores in the wild. We don't possess the instincts or the biological characteristics. Humans fill a very specific niche. We're a very rare species. In fact, we're the only species with the ability to eat virtually everything, and part of that has to do with the fact that we adapt very well to different foods. We've got a very omnivore-like GI tract. However, we still require some plant foods no matter what. We are one of the creatures that absolutely must have plants to survive. We can't survive on a purely meat diet indefinitely. We can for short periods of time. We've got to have some vegetable matter in there because we don't produce ascorbic acid like all carnivores do. That's vitamin C. We have to get that from plants. The thing is, though, humans are actually, when you look at our evolution and our GI tract and certain characteristics we are the only species that is developed to consume cooked food. We are actually cooked food eaters. So the people who started with this raw vegan stuff aren't understanding that's not actually our natural diet. That was the natural diet of certain primates, and still is many primates, but humans evolved from another species that was already cooking food. Homo erectus started cooking meat and cooking vegetables 1.9 million years ago, and we speciated from them, and our GI tract is very, very well developed for eating cooked food, particularly even cooked meats. We handle them very well. We don't have problems with it. So no, we're not raw meat eaters. Humans do not thrive well on a raw meat diet the way a carnivore does in the wild. We thrive very well on a cooked meat diet. And so the vegans who are saying otherwise, they don't really understand what's happened with anthropology, with evolution, our last speciation, or our history of how we developed from cooked food eaters. So we're really, as a species, we're omnivores and cooked food eaters, and we have a really unique niche in that we can eat and be healthy on the widest diversity of foods of any species that we know of. And that is probably why we've been so successful. We're one of the few species that can live on every single continent on the globe and thrive. And it's largely due to our ability to cook food, to extract better nutrition from it, to eat a wider diversity of foods, and live on the indigenous foods anywhere we go. So a little bit of a misunderstanding there. All right, next question. Can you explain why it is exactly that most people look the leanest right in the morning? I go through this myself. A lot of guys, it's kind of funny. Everyone's like, well, you look fat sometimes or whatever. It's in the morning. I wake up with a 6-pack usually every single morning when I get out of bed. I am one of the worst people about what you're talking about. I look like I gain anywhere between 3 and 5% body fat from the time I get up till evening time comes. And part of it, there's a few different factors going on. Normally when you slept overnight, you fasted, and the fasting causes you to dehydrate slightly. So you lose water from under the skin and everything. And because of all the rest and rejuvenation going on, your skin tightens up. So you lose water under the skin tightens up. As the day goes on, you rehydrate, you replenish your glycogen stores, electrolytes, water, things like that. You tend to regain some water under your skin, and because different clothes and stuff rub on your skin, you're active, you're doing various activities, your skin tends to loosen up through the day also. And so then your skin gets looser, and you gain water under your skin, so you look a lot fatter. It's purely about water balance and skin tightness. And I'm definitely an extreme case. Like when you mentioned it or I read this, I laughed because for me it's pretty dramatic of a difference throughout the day over like from 7 a.m. till 7 p.m. Shirtless, I look like a completely different person. And a lot of people do. That's perfectly normal. It's not weird. It's just those factors I described. All right, next question. Thinking about going on a keto diet, would you recommend it for someone with purely athletic goals and no interest in aesthetics? How do you personally drink alcohol with it? Do you have a refeed once a week? I was refeeding once a week. I've cut that back. I'm refeeding about every three weeks right now because I simply need to lose fat faster, and I tend to go a little crazy on my carb up days. But that really varies from person to person. For most people who are decently lean, the leaner you are, probably the more frequent you want your carb ups on a keto diet. I feel like where I'm at right now, I don't require a weekly carb up. I'm not lean enough to really get the most out of it, or from a body composition perspective. Dr. Jeff Volek, if you look into his research, he's done a lot of research on athletes in ketogenic diets or athletes in low carb diets. And he's got some great information for you there. Go check it out. Look into that if you're interested in that for athletics. As far as alcohol, stick to the low carb liquors. You can find resources online that tell you how many net carbs are in various types of liquor. Alcohol itself is very ketogenic. It has an extremely high thermic effect. It will not put you out of ketosis. So again, ketosis is generally used to control appetite. It works well for me for that. Most liquors will not put you out of ketosis. Go check different ones. I found out, unfortunately, myself that Jaeger bombs, even with sugar-free Red Bull, Jaeger has about 10 grams of carbs per shot, unfortunately, but there's other liquors that have 1 gram or less. Things like vodka, tequila are fantastic choices for you to go drink a little bit. Because if you're like me, I like to have 2 or 3 shots on the weekend, even if I'm not doing a carb up. But for me, I have a 3-shot limit no matter what, because I don't like to get all fucked up. But that's what you can get away with on a keto diet. So just check out the amount of carbs in each type of drink that you're drinking. All right, next question. According to Louie Simmons, for those who don't know, that's the originator of Westside Barbell, training at over 90% for more than just a couple of weeks without using the conjugate method will make you stall because supposedly it has negative effects on the nervous system. Is this effect true? If it makes any difference, I'm interested in the affecting the bench press specifically. Yeah, there's some truth to that. You can't go above 90% for very long periods of time, like several weeks. And even on the conjugate method, they're going above 90% may not be truly going above 90%, because like what Louie has you do on the conjugate method is your training max is you're changing exercises every week. So you're trying to reach a max, but you might only be in the 90% range anyways, because again, you're trying to do it while maintaining speed. It's the maximum weight that you can do while maintaining good form and good bar speed for a single on those maxes. So a lot of them are still 90%, although he really wants you to hit up around, I think, 94 to 95 ideally, but you're rotating through exercises, so you can't be certain. That's the reason that things like the Bulgarian method, you hit training maxes. Training maxes are usually 90% of your true competition max. So that's why methods like that have you stay right there and you're hitting training maxes day after day. You're not coming in and hitting a true competition max, because he is right. Your nervous system will give out. You will have problems with recovery. Your strength and things will start to decline, just again due to issues with your nervous system by hitting true maxes or going above 90%. Repeatedly. You just can't do it for any length of time, unfortunately. So I happen to agree with Louie on that. Your body can't take it. And even with the conjugate method, again, I question, and I know he does the waves and everything with the speed work and dynamic effort work, but to say that it's going to automatically prevent you from having issues, no, other than, again, you're not necessarily hitting true maxes with his training maxes, because he has you rotating exercises. So that's probably somewhat a defense against that. So there might be some truth to what he's saying there, honestly. All right, next question. Thoughts on competitive eating, Jason? Doing my best to polarize it in the UK, but curious how you see it fitting in with a strength, fitness, lifestyle, ways to limit the effects of binges, etc. Useful for everyone this time of year. Yeah, the thing is, I actually think competitive eating is pretty cool. I did a competitive pizza eating contest once in high school and I won. It was pretty fun, but I like to eat big. I think that competitive eating, like any other serious competitive endeavor, if you're taking it seriously, it can interfere with health and fitness in general. It's not healthy to do anything extreme. And I think with Furious Pete, with his cancers, the doctors did feel that his cancer was affected by his competitive eating or these big eating challenges he did. It isn't good to sit down and eat 20,000 or 15,000 calories in a day, even for a competitive purpose. But I still think, like any other competitive endeavor, it's pretty cool. And if that's what you want to do and that's what fulfills you and makes you happy and it's something you can do competitively, go for it. But I would recommend to mitigate negative effects of it, live a very healthy lifestyle outside of it. I would go into those sort of events on a little fasted cardio to create room for them to offset, again, possible negative effects on things like insulin sensitivity. You should probably lift a lot of weights if you're going to do competitive eating, because having muscle mass will, again, the more muscle mass you have, the better your insulin sensitivity, the better nutrient partitioning, the more you can offset any negative effects of the actual competition itself. And the same thing that applies to the holidays. Some of us treat our holidays like they are eating contests. I think a lot of Americans do that, and some people in Europe. So the same things apply. You need to lift weights, train a little harder going into it, cut your food back, maybe go into your big eating feast fasted a little bit, go into them fasted, do a little fasted cardio or full body training before you go into them so that you can create room for it to offset the negative effects. All right, next question. You've told us several times already that the fat-free mass index of 25 is pretty much natty limit. But for people with elite genetics, what would be reasonable, achievable fat-free mass index for someone with average or below average genetics? All right, guys, remember, we're talking in contest condition, and I think something a lot of people miss is that when they go back and they pull up some of these old bodybuilders and say, well, this guy had a 25 and a half, he had a 26, but then you look at the photos of the guys, if you go pull them up from the years these guys won, they're not in contest condition by modern standards. A lot of them are 12 or 13 or 14% body fat in those photos while standing on the bodybuilding stage. We're talking about people under 10% body fat. There's plenty of people out there who can be a 26 fat-free mass index at 15% body fat, who when they diet down lean, drop all the way to a 24 or a 23 and a half. Put that in perspective. If they diet it down without drugs, you could drop all the way under 24, even if you started at 26. So that's a big factor there. In my experience, I think the average Joe with average genetics, probably the largest they're going to be able to get if they really bust their ass, again, using Eric Helms as the example, and I might reiterate that this coming week, 23 and a half to 24 for someone with average genetics who has trained their ass off for a decade is probably reasonable once they're under 10% body fat. And again, you get a lot of guys are overestimating or they're underestimating their body fat. A lot of guys think they're 9% body fat when they're 13% or 14%. You'd really be surprised. If you don't have a visible six-pack, like a lot of guys think they're real lean, and so they skew these numbers. If you do not have a visible six-pack, you are not under 12% body fat. If you can't see all of your abs, all 6 of them nice and deep, I can assure you you're not under 12% body fat. Period. Full stop. So just something for people to consider there. Guys who just have an outline of abs thinking they're 10% body fat, no. They need to recalculate their numbers. But yeah, 23 and a half to 24 is probably what the limit for most guys. 25 is for people with really, really good exceptional genetics to be down at 9% or lower body fat while still maintaining that much muscle mass. Only fairly genetically gifted guys are going to be able to achieve that. And we've seen plenty of guys on gear who are lower. You guys go run Frank Zane's numbers while on steroids, you'd be surprised where it actually turns out he is. He was right up there around 25. All right, next question. Hey Jason, in your last video, you told us that it was unhealthy to have a high BMI even though the person is at a healthy body fat percentage range. Can you please explain why? Thanks. All right, that's why a lot of people disliked that video on BMI, what they're not understanding. I was saying that overweight and over-muscled are different things. They're in the same area on the chart. They're not at the obese end yet. If you're at the overweight range because of muscle gain, but you're at a healthy body fat percentage, you're actually okay. Your health is actually probably going to be pretty good. That's not unhealthy to be there. When you start reaching the obese range, you have to be in really good cardiovascular health with a really good diet to offset the negative effects. Meaning if you're sitting at a 32 BMI, even if you're at 10 or 11% body fat, you're still obese. And what I mean is you can offset some of it. Again, if your diet's good, you have no dietary deficiencies, a good healthy diet, minimal sugar and junk in there, minimal fried foods, and you're doing cardio every day, you might be okay because your other lifestyle factors are offsetting the weight to some extent. But at a certain threshold, it is still hard on your heart. It's still hard on the metabolic processes of your body to walk around carrying large amounts of body weight, more than your frame is intended to hold. It doesn't matter whether it's fat or muscle. Yes, you might be at a lower rate of getting cancers due to all the muscle. But as far as cardiovascular diseases, some other issues, a lot of strain that's put on your body, just carrying around the extra body weight all the time can be difficult on you. It can be taxing on you. It can actually be harmful to your health. So that's the issue, is the actual body weight is harmful to you to carry around day in, day out, and particularly taxing on things like your cardiovascular system and just things like your total oxygen capacity. Those things can be problematic. If you're 5'10", walking around at 230, I don't care how lean you are, it is still taxing on your body and probably not ideal for some health effects. The muscle will offset some health effects, but it will negatively affect others just from packing around the extra body weight. So that's what I'm talking about. And again, some of that can be offset with lifestyle to some extent, just like any other risk factor can. All right, next question. I am trying to cooperate endurance training or LISS in the way that Alex Viada does. I'm doing slow jogs with 120 beats per minute, as he has mentioned, so that it won't ruin my strength gains. I skipped 2 or 3 paragraphs. This guy wrote a really long thing. Even though I'm doing all these things, it still seems that my arms are getting a bit thinner. Why is that? Please help. Thank you and kind regards. All right, there's one of the things that guys notice. This is basic body dysmorphia images that a lot of people have who are in fitness. A lot of times guys are convinced they have one muscle, that side of their body is shrinking, or one side's bigger than the other. No one else notices it. They think that their arms are shrinking because they're losing fat. Maybe all the extra cardio you're doing is affecting your nutrient partitioning. You're losing body fat. Your arms look a little skinnier to you as a result of it. The reality is they might not actually be losing any muscle. It's just in your head. So if you know that you're doing everything right, your strength isn't dramatically going down, you're just adding in all this extra cardio and you think your arms look skinnier to you, odds are you're the only one who sees it. It's all in your head. You need to stop worrying about this sort of thing. It's silly, and if you can't shake it out of your head at a certain point, you probably should consider seeing a therapist for your body dysmorphia. That's really all it is in that case. Unless you've seen some dramatic drop in your strength as a result of doing the cardio, you're not losing muscle in your arms from it. So again, this is basically body dysmorphia issue. All right, next question. Oh, guys, and now we're going to get to the PED type questions, TRT questions, things like that. So if you're not interested in those things, it's time for you to cut out. So I hope you have a great day and enjoyed the Q&A. But for those interested, let's continue. Hey, Jason, in your Rich Piana video, you mentioned that you can just pin long ester tests like test C and test D once a week. I've read in several forums that it's optimal to pin it twice a week. Is there any advantage to pinning it twice a week over only once, and would it be the same for both TRT and a blast? Thanks. This is just forum mythology. They're talking about keeping your blood levels more stable, but the truth is, medically, we know that if you pin a long ester like test sip once every 2 weeks, you do get a crash the last few days. But we're talking it taking 10 or 11 days to start getting too low. And that's off of TRT doses. Longer, bigger doses tend to taper down longer. That's the thing with the half-life of these drugs. The bigger the dose, the longer it takes to taper down. So guys who are going above TRT doses thinking that they need to pin an enanthate or cypionate ester twice a week, that's just silly forum lore. And when we do research on these people, look, the study that I showed you guys with the test cypionate that they were giving the young men in the study, they pinned them once a week. And these guys gained 18 pounds of muscle without even lifting weights. And in fact, there's at least one hypothesis out there that waiting longer and pinning larger doses at a slightly lower frequency actually has a larger anabolic effect. And when you look at the way the body works, there might actually be some truth to that. The only thing is that, particularly with shorter esters, you tend to get more side effects from the big spikes from taking, something like 100 milligrams a day versus 200 milligrams every other day. The 100 milligrams a day is generally going to give slightly milder side effects because you don't get as big as spikes of the drugs. You don't get as big as spikes of conversions into other hormones that they turn into. So it's about mitigating side effects to some extent. But with longer chain esters, it shouldn't be a problem once a week. It's in your head at that point if you think that that's mitigating side effects. It's just something that's psychosomatic. And as far as the gains go, the best hypothesis would be that you reach a better anabolic threshold by doing them once a week. So there's no real benefit to splitting up longer chain esters to twice a week other than someone whose baby's on a large amount of gear just doesn't want to pin that much in one day. It's just really inconvenient for them, because they might be using, 6 or 7 or 8 milliliters per week of a long chain ester. Because if they're a serious bodybuilder, that's perfectly normal. So that can be the issue. But as far as gains and side effects go with the longer chain, it shouldn't help you to spread them out. And even the research we do on them, they just pin them once a week because even the medical doctors and researchers don't see a reason otherwise. All right, next question. How can I raise my human growth hormone without a prescription? Endocrinologists around here are shitty. And is Deer Antler Velvet just another snake oil scam? Yes, Deer Antler Velvet is a complete snake oil scam, and I'm shocked that anybody even falls for that. It's just unimaginable to me that anyone would actually think that that crap would do anything or work. It's, again, clever marketing for really dumb people. All right, as far as boosting your growth hormone without a prescription, well, you could buy human growth hormone without a prescription. The next best thing you could do there is going to be, if it's that important to you, remember, boosting growth hormone doesn't do that much for you. Keep that in mind. It's something that's done synergistically to enhance the anabolic response of very large doses of anabolics. By itself, it does very, very little. But as far as that goes, there are GHRPs and GHRHs. There are peptides out there that are very cheap. They're legal in most countries. They're legal in the United States, legal in Canada, legal in the United Kingdom, that are research peptides that have been shown in plenty of studies to boost growth hormone production. But you'll have to go do your own research on how to use them and how they work and what they do. There's tons of material, literally hundreds and hundreds of pages you can find in a single day on the internet about that, including studies, research, everything. So if you're interested in that, you can go check out how some of these growth hormone stimulating peptides work. They're very inexpensive and they're legal in most first world countries still. And that might change in the near future, but as of right now, they have a legal status for research purposes. They're generally research chemicals. So those are really your options there. All right, next question. In a test and deca cycle, and deca meaning nandrolone decoinate, that's the street name for it, do you recommend a higher dose of deca than test? This is counterintuitive to what a lot of bodybuilders do, but a lot of strength athletes, particularly in Eastern Bloc countries, Russia, for many years have been doing things that way. They tend to run very large anabolic doses with very small testosterone doses. And the reason being, certain drugs, when they're put into higher doses with others, tend to cause more side effects. If you take anything that has a higher androgen receptor affinity to the receptor, like nandrolone or trenbolone or something like that, and you stack it with any significant amount of, say, testosterone or another aromatizing drug or anything that has its own unique side effects, what happens is that the stronger androgen receptor substance tends to push the testosterone molecule off the receptor, more of it floating in the bloodstream, less of it binding to receptors or binding a little slower. It tends to boost the side effects a little more. So if someone's running nandrolone or trenbolone with testosterone, for example, the anabolic there will actually increase the side effects of the testosterone. So a lot of guys will bring the testosterone down to just the level they need to maintain normal mood function, brain function, sexual function, and combine that with the higher dose of an anabolic. I do generally support, for people who are going to do anabolics, I do generally support that notion, even though I know guys who will just blast high doses of both. I know plenty of guys who will blast a gram of tren with a gram of testosterone at the same time without giving it a second thought. In fact, I got a friend who regularly does both at above a gram together. He is also a massive dude. But that's what he does. I don't generally recommend that for side effect purposes. And that's the way that most people should consider their stacking, is looking at how things will work synergistically and which substances will reduce or increase the side effects of others, and kind of mitigate that with their doses. And again, that's for people who are worried about either peak performance, optimal performance, or things like that. People who are trying to get as huge as possible generally don't care about side effects, so they don't worry about it. They'll just shotgun everything together. So it's really a matter of what people are trying to do. But generally, when someone stacks an anabolic at a really high dose and, say, the testosterone or the aromatizing compounds at a lower dose, side effects will be lower, and actually they'll tend to be less bloated, and they'll generally look slightly more aesthetic. Not always the case, but that's the general trend there. All right, guys, but that's the end of those PED questions. Now we've got a personal question, and then I'm going to close it out. Personal question: how were your teenage years? Mindset, depression, firearms, martial arts, working out, etc. Yeah, those are all things I can answer quickly. My mindset varied a lot through my teenage years, because I started at 13 and ended later. I'm not going to discuss my later teenage years, 18 plus, because that's things I don't really want to put out on the internet. As far as mindset, depression, yeah, I did suffer a bit of depression due to some traumatic events from my childhood. I did have to have a lot of major surgeries in my ears and things. Like, I had a major reconstructive surgery at 13 in my left ear. Some of that was depressing, because I was completely deaf until I was 13 in my left ear. I have a lot of artificial work done in there, like a bonus skin tympanoplasty. But as far as martial arts go, I started martial arts when I was 7. Through my teenage years, I did earn... People have asked me what styles. I'm only going to cover one style that I've learned. I got my first degree black belt in American Taekwondo when I was 17. And I think I started studying that when I was around 8 years old. I started with karate, then switched to Taekwondo because there was a good little Taekwondo instructor really near me. So I started under him, and then when we moved, I had to change instructors. Firearms, I started shooting at age 6. All through my teenage years, starting at age 12, I did shoot 1,000-yard rifle competition. And yes, that was even with an ear problem. I wore earmuffs. So shooting and hand loading and precision rifle shooting was something I did at a competitive level through my teens. And so it was just an intrinsic part of my lifestyle. As far as working out goes, I didn't lift weights. All through that time period, I just did cardio, I did jogging, and I did some body weight exercises because I was just concerned with martial arts. So I didn't really work out per se. I didn't really start lifting weights till I was around 19. And I was actually a distance runner at the time and then switched over and started lifting weights. So hopefully it kind of gives you an idea of what my teenage years were like. And like everyone else, my love life and dating life as a teenager were a big giant mess and a clusterfuck, just like all of you have gone through. It was just a big mess. And some of it is stuff I can laugh about now as an adult. So I guess that kind of sums up your questions for my teenage years. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.